The moment my son called me a broke old man, I knew something in our relationship had already died. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how easily they came out of his mouth. There was no anger in his voice, no frustration, no hesitation, just calm certainty. The kind of certainty people have when they believe they are stating a fact, not delivering an insult. "You need to stop embarrassing us," he said, glancing briefly at his wife as if she needed to hear it too, in front of her family. I remember nodding slowly, more out of habit than agreement. The kitchen clock kept ticking. The refrigerator hummed quietly. The coffee in my hand had already gone cold. I didn't argue, because when someone reduces you to a financial problem, words stop being useful. My name is Henry Walsh. I'm 62 years old, and for the last 15 years, I've been living inside a version of myself my son never questioned. To him, I was exactly what I looked like: an aging warehouse worker, a man clinging to routine, someone barely getting by on a pension. I drove a 1998 Dodge Dakota, rust creeping along the doors, a cracked windshield I never bothered to replace. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because it still worked. I wore work pants bought on sale, boots that had been repaired instead of replaced, and flannel shirts that smelled faintly of oil, dust, and long hours. When I showed up to family dinners, I brought grocery store flowers. When someone poured expensive wine, I smiled and said I couldn't tell the difference anyway. That single sentence did more damage than I ever intended. Because once people think you don't understand value, they stop seeing you as someone who deserves respect. They stop asking questions. My son, Michael, is 32 years old, MBA, regional sales manager at a tech company, $200,000 a year. In his world, numbers equal intelligence. His wife, Sophia, believes success should be visible. If it can't be posted, it doesn't fully exist. She drives a $70,000 BMW. I drive something older than their marriage. The entitlement didn't arrive all at once. It grew quietly. At first, it sounded harmless. At Thanksgiving, Michael started calling my house the family home when he spoke to Sophia's parents. Then it became our future investment. Then, casually, confidently, over turkey and polite smiles, Sophia said, "When we take over the house, we can finally renovate." She looked at me and smiled, like she was offering advice. "You could downsize, Dad. Something that makes sense for your income level." Those words stayed with me, not because they were cruel, but because of how normal they sounded to her. A week later, she posted photos of my living room online, the room where Michael learned to crawl, the room where his mother once laughed so hard she cried. The caption talked about renovation, about modern value, about resistance to change. The comments were brutal. "Boomers never let go. Just take it over already. He's holding you back." Sophia screenshotted the worst ones and sent them to Michael. "See," she wrote, "even professionals agree." They never asked how it felt. They assumed I wouldn't understand. What neither of them realized was that I was watching, not angrily, quietly, and taking notes, because when people believe you are powerless, they stop hiding who they really are. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. The real shift didn't happen online. It happened 6 weeks later. At dinner, in my house, Sophia insisted we all sit together, said it would be good for alignment. Her parents arrived early, Thomas and Patricia Morrison. They didn't knock the way guests do. They walked in the way buyers walk into a property they already think belongs to them. Thomas didn't even sit down at first. He walked slowly around the living room, hands behind his back, nodding to himself. This floor creaks, he said. Might be settling. He looked up at the ceiling. Roof looks original. Then he turned toward the hallway. How old is this HVAC system, Henry? These older systems can drain money fast. Sophia was already typing on her phone, taking notes. Michael followed every word like a student listening to a professor. Dad, Michael said, Thomas knows a contractor. Friend rates? You could probably fix everything for under 50 grand, if you're smart about it. 50 grand. The way he said it, like it was loose change. Sophia turned to her mother. Henry doesn't really do big purchases, she explained. Fixed income, you know. Patricia smiled sympathetically. Have you thought about what happens when you can't maintain the house anymore? My church has information about very affordable senior housing. I looked at her for a moment. I'm 62 years old. I run 6 miles every morning. But I didn't say that. Michael leaned forward. Actually, Dad, that's what we wanted to talk about. He and Sophia exchanged a look. They thought I wouldn't notice. We've been discussing our 5-year plan, he continued. Sophia's business is growing. We need more space. She nodded. We're thinking about starting a family soon. Then Michael smiled. This house would be perfect for us. Perfect for them. In my house. And where would I go? I asked. They hesitated. Well, Michael said carefully, you could move into something smaller. A condo, maybe. Sophia jumped in. My firm works with several developments. Units under 200,000. Much more manageable for your situation. My situation. The situation where I supposedly couldn't afford the house I had lived in for 23 years. Thomas leaned back in his chair. Henry, I'm going to be straight with you. He folded his hands like a man delivering wisdom. Property values here have skyrocketed. Your house is probably worth 700, maybe 750 now. That's a lot of equity for someone on a pension. You could sell, give Michael and Sophia a good deal as family, and still live comfortably. Then he added, smiling, you'd be helping your son build generational wealth. Isn't that what fathers are supposed to do? That question stayed with me long after they left. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed something they weren't asking. They were assigning me a role. That night, I smiled and said I'd think about it. Michael went to bed believing progress had been made. The email arrived at 6:15 the next morning. Subject line, moving forward with property transfer. They had already talked to a real estate attorney. They had already decided what was best. I would deed the house to them now. They would allow me to stay in the guest room for up to 2 years. While I transitioned, they would cover my moving expenses. When the time came, if I refused, they would explore alternative legal remedies to ensure proper property stewardship. Property stewardship for the house I built with my own money. I called Michael immediately. He answered on the third ring, already irritated. Dad, did you get my email? It's early, he added. I'm heading to work. We need to talk, I said. There's nothing to talk about, he replied. Sophia and I thought this through carefully. This is what's best for everyone. Best for everyone. Or best for you. You're 62, he continued. How much longer can you realistically maintain a 3,000 square foot house? The property taxes alone are probably killing you. What are they? I asked. About 12,000 a year? 16, I said. There was a pause. You can't afford that on a pension, he snapped. That's exactly my point. You're house poor, Dad. You're sacrificing your quality of life to hold on to a building. We're offering you a way out of my own home. And if I say no? I asked. Don't make this difficult, he said. Then came the part he didn't think sounded like a threat. Richard's attorney looked into it. Texas property law is complicated, but there are provisions for family transfers, especially when the current owner isn't able to properly maintain the property. We can do this the easy way or the complicated way. I sat quietly, listening to my son explain how I could lose my home for my own good. You drive a 25-year-old truck, he continued. You shop at Walmart. You haven't taken a vacation in years. Meanwhile, you're sitting on $700,000 in equity. This isn't about taking something from you, he said. It's about smart financial planning. Then he hung up. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I taught him to make pancakes when he was 7. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. My son genuinely believed he was rescuing me. And people who believe that don't ask for permission. The documents arrived at noon. Official letterhead, carefully worded concern, polite sentences wrapped around sharp intentions. They called it a property transfer agreement. They framed it as a cohabitation arrangement. I had 60 days to sign. If I didn't, they would pursue alternative legal remedies to ensure proper property stewardship. Property stewardship for the house I built with my own money 23 years ago. They even included a helpful breakdown of my estimated monthly expenses based on what they assumed was my pension income. According to their math, after housing costs, I would barely be able to afford groceries. The final paragraph tightened my jaw. This arrangement allows Henry Walsh to age in place with dignity, while ensuring the property remains in family hands and is properly maintained for future generations. Age in place with dignity. In the guest room of my own house, I carried the papers to my home office, the small room Michael thought held nothing but old tax returns. I opened the filing cabinet I hadn't shown him since he was a teenager. Everything was exactly where I had left it. Articles of incorporation, property deeds, bank statements, wire confirmations, a printed Bloomberg profile from 18 months ago. The invisible freight kings of the South. I spread the documents across my desk, not with anger, with clarity. I took photos with my flip phone and made my list. 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, Margaret Chen. She'd represented me for over 20 years. She picked up on the first ring. Henry, she said, what's wrong? You never call during business hours. I need documents prepared, I said. Fast. My son is trying to take my house. There was a pause on the line. What kind of documents? She asked carefully. The kind that teach someone the difference between inheriting something and assuming they deserve it. She exhaled slowly. How fast are we talking? 24 hours. Another pause. And Margaret, I added, make sure everything is bulletproof. This is going to get ugly. The second call was to Robert Patterson, CEO of Walsh Logistics. Technically my employee. In practice, the man who ran daily operations. Robert, I said, we need to accelerate the Patterson Industries acquisition, the Irving facility, and the Plano warehouse. Full cash offer. Close in 48 hours. He didn't respond immediately. Henry, he finally said, that's aggressive. We've been negotiating for months. I know, I replied, but I need the Irving warehouse, operational under new ownership By Friday, there was another pause. Michael works in that building, I added. He doesn't know I own it. This time, Robert understood. Oh, he said quietly, this is about your son. Make it happen, I said. The third call was the hardest. I dialed Dr. Susan Martinez, the family therapist Michael and I saw twice. After his mother died, she answered on the second ring. Henry, I need an emergency session, I said. Documented. And I need you to witness something. There was concern in her voice. Are you okay? I will be, I said. But tomorrow is going to be difficult. By sunset, everything was in motion. Contracts drafted. Funds moved. Signatures scheduled. Michael had no idea. He went to work that day, believing he was in control, believing the pressure would wear me down, believing time was on his side. He didn't know. That time had already run out. The dinner party was Sophia's idea. A celebration, she called it. 20 people in my house. Her design clients, Michael's co-workers, her parents, everyone drinking wine. That cost more than my groceries for a month. Sophia had hired a catering company. She introduced them to my kitchen, like she owned it. Michael wore a suit that probably cost $2,000. His wedding ring caught the light, platinum. Small diamonds. He'd once told me it cost $8,000. A smart investment piece, he'd said. I arrived exactly on time. Work pants, a flannel shirt, a 6-pack of beer that cost $7 at the gas station. Sophia met me at the door. I saw the panic in her eyes. Henry, she said quickly, I thought you might want to change first. Change into what? I asked. She waved her hand vaguely. Something more appropriate. The Morrisons are here. This is what I wear, I said, walking past her. The room didn't go silent, but it shifted. That subtle pause, when people notice something that doesn't fit the picture. I recognized faces. Michael's boss, Trevor. Sophia's biggest client, Richard Morrison, holding court, with a glass of wine that probably cost $40. Henry, Richard called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Glad you could make it. Come here, let me introduce you around. He steered me toward a group of men. This is Michael's father, he said. Henry. James owns a construction company. David's in commercial real estate, and Thomas is private equity. They shook my hand politely, carefully, the way rich people do, around working folks. So, Henry, Richard asked, smiling, what do you do? Work at a warehouse? Sophia appeared beside us, with a glass of wine, from the cheaper bottle, not the one everyone else was drinking. Have you always been in warehouse work? Thomas asked. The question sounded polite, but I could hear the classification happening. Most of my adult life, I said. James nodded. Honest work, he said. Hard on the back, though. Sophia jumped in. Henry's actually thinking about retiring soon, she said brightly. Aren't you, Henry? We've been helping him look at his options. Options like what? David asked. Downsizing, Sophia replied smoothly. This house is really too much for one person. Michael and I have been talking about taking it over, helping Henry transition to something more manageable. The conversation continued around me, everyone discussing my future, my house, my finances. Like I wasn't standing there. I sipped my $7 beer and watched my son nod along, and waited. Eventually, Richard cleared his throat. That was his signal, the sound he made when he wanted the room's attention. Actually, he said loudly, that's partly why we're all here tonight. The conversations faded. Glasses lowered. Michael straightened his jacket. Sophia smiled and reached for his hand. Michael stood up. pulling her with him. Dad, he said, we wanted to tell you with everyone here. These people are our support system. Sophia nodded. We've decided to start a family, she said. Soft gasps filled the room. Congratulations followed. Hugs. Smiles. Michael continued. We're going to need the space. We're moving forward with the property transfer. We've already talked to attorneys. Everything's arranged so you can stay comfortable during the transition. Applause erupted. Someone raised a glass. To new beginnings, they said. To family, taking care of family. Everyone lifted their drinks. Everyone except me. Michael noticed. Dad, he said carefully, aren't you happy for us? I'm curious about something, I replied. The room quieted. Michael frowned. What? How much do you think this house is worth? I asked. He blinked. We had it appraised, he said. $740,000. And how do you think? I continued. I've been paying the mortgage. For the last 23 years, Richard answered for him. Henry, we know it's been a struggle. That's why this solution makes sense. There is no mortgage, I said. I paid cash for this house in 2001. A few nervous laughs rippled through the room. Michael shook his head. That's not possible, he said. The house cost $300,000. You were working at the warehouse. Where would you get that kind of money? Where would I get it? I repeated. The silence deepened. Michael, I asked, do you know which warehouse I work at? He hesitated. The main distribution center in Irving, I continued. The one off Route 114. Michael's brow furrowed. My company ships through that facility, he said. We use Walsh Logistics all the time. Interesting, I replied. Tell me, when you ship through Walsh Logistics, who do you think owns that company? Trevor, Michael's boss, spoke up. It's privately held, he said. The owner's name is... He pulled out his phone. Henry Walsh. He looked up. Huh. Same name as you. That's because it is me, I said. The silence was absolute. Michael stared at me. What? I own Walsh Logistics, I continued calmly. I founded it in 2007, after selling my first company. We operate 48 warehouse facilities across 12 states. Current valuation is approximately $72 million. Sophia made a choking sound. That's not possible, she said. You drive a truck from the 90s. I pulled out my flip phone. Would you like to see the dashboard? I opened an app most people wouldn't expect. Real-time revenue. Fleet tracking. Today's gross income. I scrolled. $216,000, I said. Today, Richard's face went pale. You're Henry Walsh, he said quietly. The Henry Walsh. We've tried to acquire the Irving facility for 3 years. You refused every offer. That's true, I said. I wasn't selling. I paused. Well, I corrected myself. I wasn't selling until yesterday. Richard's mouth opened. Yesterday, I sold the Irving facility to Robert Patterson. The deal closed at 4 p.m. He takes possession Monday morning. Michael finally found his voice. You sold the warehouse where I work? I sold the building. Your company leases space in, I said. Yes. Trevor looked sick. Our lease is up for renewal in August, he said. Patterson Industries renegotiates aggressively. I expect your shipping costs will increase substantially, I added. Probably 40%. Patricia grabbed Richard's arm. Didn't you say all 3 dealerships ship parts through that facility? Richard nodded numbly. Our entire logistics chain runs through Irving. Well, I said gently, you might want to speak with Robert. He's less flexible than I was. Trevor's phone buzzed. He stared at the screen. Our CFO just sent new lease terms, he whispered. $55,000 a month, up from 32, plus fees. That's 400,000 more a year. Michael grabbed my arm. Dad, he hissed, you can't do this. Can't do what? I asked. Own a business? Sell property? Run it how I see fit. You did this because of the house, he said. I sold the Irving facility because Robert offered $38 million. I replied, I accepted. The fact that your employer leases space there is incidental. But you knew it would hurt them, he said. I knew it would affect operational costs, I replied. Whether that hurts them depends on how they manage it. Sophia was scrolling frantically on her phone. Henry, she whispered, are you Walsh Logistics? The company Bloomberg wrote about? They called you a ghost mogul. I prefer low profile, I said. Michael sank into a chair. This doesn't make sense, he muttered. You live like someone who doesn't need to prove anything. I nodded. Michael, I said quietly, when was the last time you asked about my work, about my day, about anything in my life that wasn't convenient for you to know? He opened his mouth, closed it. I'll wait, I said. The room waited with us. 20 people watching my son realized he knew nothing about his father. Sophia was the first to break the silence. But the house, she said, her voice shaking, you let us think you were struggling. I never said I was struggling, I replied. You assumed you saw an old truck, work clothes, and decided you understood everything about my financial situation. But I'm your son, Michael said quietly. I should have known. Should you? I asked. When was the last time you visited without wanting something? When was the last time you called just to talk? When was the last time you asked if I needed help? Instead of deciding I did, Michael looked down at his hands. I don't remember. Patricia tried to recover. Henry, surely you understand, she said. They were just trying to look out for your best interests. By threatening legal action, if I didn't sign over my house? I asked. Richard shifted uncomfortably. We thought you might need guidance. Guidance, I repeated. I looked around the room. 20 people who had spent the evening discussing my future like I was incompetent. Let me show you something, I said. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. First Republic Trust, I said calmly. Balance as of this morning. I turned the screen outward. $41.3 million. Sophia gasped. I swiped. Investment portfolio. 12.7 million. Another swipe. Real estate holdings. Outside of logistics facilities. 18 million. I did the math out loud. Total liquid net worth, I said, approximately $72 million, give or take what the market did today. That was the moment the room collapsed. Trevor was the first to stand. Michael, he said quickly, I think we should go. Others followed. Sophia's clients, Michael's co-workers, friends of the Morrisons. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty, except for Michael, Sophia, Richard, and Patricia. Richard tried one last time. Henry, he said, perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. You tried to intimidate me into giving up my property. You failed. Now you're dealing with increased costs because I sold an asset to a qualified buyer. That's business. But our dealerships, Patricia protested, not my problem. You should have considered that before your attorney brother sent threatening letters to a man who owns half the distribution capacity in North Texas. Patricia turned to Michael. Did you know any of this? Michael shook his head. Dad, he whispered. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to know who would value me. For who I am, I said. Not for what I have. Your mother and I decided years ago to live modestly, to see what kind of man you would become without knowing what I owned. His voice cracked, and I failed. You didn't just fail, I said quietly. You tried to take my house because you thought I was too poor and too stupid to stop you. Sophia broke down. We thought we were helping, she cried. But really, we just wanted the house, the equity, to look successful. I stood. I need you both to leave now. Dad, please, Michael said. The documents I signed yesterday transfer this house into the Walsh Family Trust, I said. As of this morning, you're listed as temporary residents. You'll receive formal eviction notices tomorrow. Sophia's face drained of color. Eviction? I'm evicting you. From the guest house, I said. You've been living in the converted garage apartment for 2 years. Rent-free. Michael stared at me. This can't be legal. I picked up my phone. Margaret, I said when she answered. Can you explain the situation? Her voice was calm. Michael and Sophia Walsh have resided in the detached guest apartment since July 2022 under a month-to-month occupancy agreement. As of yesterday, Henry Walsh issued a 60-day notice to vacate, all entirely legal under Texas property law. Sophia protested, but we've been paying rent. No, Margaret corrected. You've been covering utilities. $300 a month. Market rate would be at least $1,800. You've been heavily subsidized. The Morrison family left without another word. Michael and Sophia sat in my living room, looking lost. Dad, Michael said quietly, I'm sorry. I know, I replied. Are you really going to make us leave? I'm going to make you learn what things cost, I said. You lived nearly free for 2 years, while criticizing how I live, while planning to take my home. They left just after midnight. I sat on the back porch, the same porch where I taught Michael to tie fishing lures when he was 8. I felt tired, not regret, just tired. My phone buzzed. Sophia had gone live on Instagram. 14,000 people watched her cry from the passenger seat of her BMW. My father-in-law isn't poor, she said. He's worth $72 million. And we tried to take his house. The comments were brutal. By morning, clips were everywhere. 3 days later, Michael showed up at my house. No sleep, no confidence. Her business was gone. His job was on the line. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because I wanted to know if you loved me when you thought I had nothing. He stared at the sunrise. And I failed. Yes, I said. You did. 3 weeks later, they came back again. No BMW. Entry-level jobs, a small apartment. They apologized, not asking for help, just asking for a chance. We cooked dinner together, burned garlic, overcooked pasta. We laughed. After they left, I called Robert Patterson. Cancel the warehouse job, I said. He doesn't need shortcuts. Money isn't the greatest gift. Property isn't either. The greatest gift is the chance to discover who you are when no one is paying your way. Sometimes to give someone everything, you have to take everything away first.